How are you?
I'm extremely well, thank you for asking. Probably better than I have any right to be.
Why do you mean any right to be?
Because I think that in order to deserve how well I am, I would have had to have been out doing good deeds or like working for community service all year or, building homeless shelters or something like that. I feel like maybe I'm benefiting from somebody else's good karma.
And isn't making music something that's, helping people?
I think I do a fairly good job, and if I was just very happy, I think that I would deserve it, but I'm extraordinarily happy, and it's hard to figure out what I possibly could have done to get that lucky.
What makes you so happy?
I think the easy answer is music, and the slightly more complex version of it is that not only do I get to do what I love for a living, actually who I am has become what I do for a living. I can't, music is not the job that I do, it's not the work, it is simply who I am. All I have to do is be myself and a lot of music will come out. And it's a lot of support from the universe to be unique and to be as authentic as I can be and as much myself as I can be.
Since when have you been yourself?
It is a ever-changing process. It is a, I will keep on continuing to be myself, and that won't always be the same thing until I die. But what I guess I mean is that when I began to sing and play music, I didn't know what I sounded like. I didn't know who I was supposed to sound like. I was good at mimicking the people that that inspired me, but it wasn't until I'd been doing this for a good 10 years or so that I felt like I knew what I sounded like. And now that I do, that's me. And all I have to do is be myself, in spite of whatever other circumstances are, rooms full of people or pressure or nerves, whatever it turns out to be. But
you said 10 years. When was this process? When did you find yourself then? Because you said you were mimicking other people?
Well, yeah, when I first started out, all I knew how to do was sound like, Ray Charles, or sound like Otis Redding, or sound like James Taylor, or sound like Cat Stevens, or sound like somebody who had inspired me. And then what happened was, in the middle of this, I started to change the things about the way I sang that were the way that other people do it. I started to come up with my own character. But it takes a while to build that kind of musical character. So little by little, I'm singing things which could only be my phrasing. You couldn't trace them to anybody else.
Is it so? Can you say that this process was started with your first solo album, Another Run Around the Sun?
Yes, but I would have said that phase of the process was more oriented around playing with other musicians and trying to sound like them, trying to have their sound be what my sound was meant to be. Hiring serious hired gun studio musicians and bringing them in because I didn't necessarily have the confidence about where I was trying to go, and having them play the parts that they came up with, the songs that I had written, and sort of relying upon their, uniqueness and well-established individuality to sort of guide my own. And then I sort of got rid of my whole band and decided that I needed to be myself and have my songs stand up by themselves before I started adding anything else to try to enhance them. Yeah. A lot of the time when I added things to the songs, it took away from them because it was distracting from the point, whatever it was that I was adding to it or trying to hide behind. And now I feel like there's no hiding. I'm just very much myself, however I am that day, playing the songs that I believe in.
You said hiring other people, relying on them. Is there one thing that happened, one maybe song that you wrote, or maybe someone played, or that was a catalyst for this process?
Well, yeah, I wrote my first batch of songs very early on, very late in my life. I had resisted being a musician and a singer and a songwriter.
Why?
Because my parents are both very well-known singer-songwriters, and the example of success that they had set for me seemed unrealistic in a contemporary world. I didn't want to be disappointed in myself, so I looked for other things that I wanted to do. But finally I figured that all of my heroes were people who wrote songs, so there wasn't anything else that I was willing to spend my whole life making a career out of.
Yeah.
So that's when I did that, and I wrote a bunch of songs that I was proud of, but I was so afraid about what I was supposed to sound like. And I had a record deal, and they said, oh, make sure you don't sound too much like your parents, and this and that and the other. So I was really worried about how I was supposed to come off. And so my solution to that was that I hired the best musicians I could find. And I relied upon their judgment as far as how my song should come across and how it should be presented. I took a lot of advice from them. And that was great advice. That was another part of my process of getting to where I am now. But the hired guns that you have around you, because writing songs of your own that are autobiographical and that mean something to you, that make you tender, getting on stage and singing them, it's a vulnerable process, you know, and starting out, especially because, again, my parents are super famous and beloved for what they do, starting out, it made me insecure. So what I found after a while was that it was just me hiding behind these incredible musicians that I'd brought through, so that I could keep myself clear of the judgment that I imagined my parents' fans were having, where they were saying, oh yeah, he's good, but he's not as good as his old man, or whatever it was going to be. So little by little, I started getting rid of the musicians and just figuring out my own way of making the song speak.
When were you really comfortable with your own songs and with the way you play them, and regarding how successful you are?
Regarding how successful I am?
Yeah?
I mean, I get to do what I love for a living, and that's the number one wish I could ever have for anybody, me or anybody that I love. But at the same time, and I don't have to have another job, which is amazing. So that is success. By my definition, in any other terms, that's success. Also, I would be lying if I said that there wasn't a modicum of disappointment, because by relation to what I've seen, it seems like such a long road still to go. But it's okay, because I got my health, and I'm more in love with music than I've ever been.
It must have been what you said. Well, you mentioned your parents, James Taylor and Carly Simon. What did it do to you? How hard was it? Was it easy for you? Was it really hard, mentally or psychologically? Or?
This is a complicated question. May I give it a detailed answer?
Yeah.
To begin with, if my parents had not been James Taylor and Carly Simon, I would not have been so inspired by what they did that I would have been willing to go into the family business, in spite of the fact that I knew I was setting myself up for living or working in a serious shadow and filling some horribly big footsteps, you know? That's the first thing. The second thing was that once I actually did decide I wanted to get into it, what I should have done was be playing by myself in little bars and woodsheds all over the world for 6 years, to 10 people at a time, with nobody listening, while I got comfortable, while I figured out what I sounded like. Instead, the first time I was ever on stage playing my own songs was for the 2001 Olympic ski team in Salt Lake City, with 2,000 people there, Spike Lee in the front row. And this was an opportunity that got made for me based upon the success and the merit that my parents had earned. It was a door that got kicked open for me, that because of where I come from, that it was an incredible opportunity, so I stepped through it. But I wasn't ready for that opportunity because I hadn't earned it myself. That was the hardest part to figure out, that in spite of the fact that those connections would open doors to opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise, I needed to be sure that I would be ready for the opportunity when I stepped through the door, and I made some mistakes that way coming up.